Good afternoon, everybody. I, on behalf of the communications team here, welcome all our friends from the press to this AICC briefing. And to brief us, we have senior parliamentarian, former union minister, and a very senior member of the Congress party, Shri P. Chidambaram. Without taking any more time, I'll request sir to begin the briefing. Sir.
Good morning to all of you. I hope all of you are well and safe. I have a very brief opening statement to make. I'll read the opening statement and then we can take any questions. Today is April the 29th. Tomorrow is the last working day of the month. More than 12 crore people of India are waiting with bated breath. They want to know if they will be paid their salaries, wages for the month of April. There is palpable tension and rising uncertainty among the working people of India and their families. According to the annual report of the Ministry of MSME, 11 crore people are engaged in 6.3 crore MSMEs. Most of them would not have worked a single day in the month of April because the entire country was in a lockdown imposed to contain the coronavirus pandemic. How will these people feed themselves and their families without an income? These 11 crore people's livelihoods are in danger now because most of the employers are unable to pay wages, salaries. The businesses have had no sales this month, that is March, and their payments to their vendors are also stuck, leaving the vendors also in distress. Large swathes of the private sector are faced with what economists call an extreme liquidity shock. Furthermore, these businesses are also unsure about their future. They do not know whether they can continue their businesses or will be forced to shut down permanently. The time to make bold decisions to save the MSMEs is now. I repeat, now. If businesses do not see hope, they will decide to close. The government of India has to step in today to protect 11 crore Indians and give hope to MSMEs. It is bewildering that there has been absolutely no financial package or assistance announced for businesses since the onset of COVID-19. The government may have the luxury of time, but the MSMEs do not. They need to know right away whether they will be helped to stay afloat and thereby pay salaries, wages to those dependent on these businesses. The Congress party has submitted a proposal with specific, well thought out and concrete suggestions to help the 6.3 crore MSMEs. We urge the Prime Minister to look at that proposal and immediately announce the implementation of two specific recommendations. One, a rupee 1 lakh crore wage protection assistance to help MSMEs pay wages and salaries for the month of April. Two, rupees 1 lakh crore credit guarantee fund for MSMEs that will help them to go to the banks and borrow money. Further, for the non-MSMEs, we urge the government to announce a paycheck protection program. Let me repeat that, a paycheck protection program, similar to the one announced in the United States. This is not a legislation, but a financial assistance package. According to the Income Tax Department, there are roughly 1 crore people with a salary income of less than rupees 3.5 lakhs a year, or rupees 30,000 a month. Assuming an average salary of rupees 15,000 a month for these 1 crore people, the total cost comes to rupees 15,000 crore for the month of April. This is not a large sum to protect the livelihoods of 1 crore people who have filed tax returns and paid taxes in the past and can easily be found. the government must announce a paycheck protection program right away to protect the salaries of these 1 crore employees. The Congress Party also suggests waiver of employers' contribution to the Employees Provident Fund, EPF, and Employee State Insurance, ESI, on a temporary basis for the next 3 months. This will assist in reducing the payroll costs of employees, employers, and retaining the workforce. Time is of the essence. In the absence of a clear signal of assistance from the government during these extremely difficult times, the private sector will be forced to resort to large-scale retrenchments and layoffs, which will devastate livelihoods of hundreds of millions of people. We urge the Prime Minister to step in urgently and announce an assistance package to protect the wages and salaries and paychecks that are due in the next few days. Now, I'm open to answering some questions.
Thank you, sir. We'll begin with friends who have logged in from outside. I can see them parked in the car. Siddharth from ANI, please come in.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Siddharth from ANI, sir. Sir, yesterday, former Congress President Rahul Gandhi raised an issue of the 50 willful defaulters. And later on, the Congress party named Mehul Choksi, Nirav Modi, and Vijay Mallya among those defaulters. Now, government has given a reply on this, saying that all these loans were given during the UPA government tenure, and it is due to the process of the RBI. These loans have been written off. And another Union Minister, Mr. Prakash Javadekar, has categorically said that Rahul Gandhi and Congress party is misleading the people. Writing off doesn't mean waiving off. What's your reaction on it, sir?
I'll answer this question, but let's defer it for a time being.
Okay.
Then I take questions on the statement, please. I will answer your question.
Okay, right, sir. I'll invite
Questions on
first questions on suo motu, on the statement that's are made. Let's first have the questions.
Yeah.
Sanjeev Chopra from PTI. Sanjeev, you wanted to ask a question. Is it on suo motu?
No, not on the suo motu. In fact, on the finance minister.
Okay.
We'll come back.
We'll come back to that.
The statement.
Sunil,
Here is a suo motu question from Sandeep.
Sandeep from Bartman. Yes, Sandeep, go ahead.
Yeah. Sir, good afternoon. I just want to know, can you elaborate the paycheck system, what USA has done? Because it's a new thing for India.
See, the Paycheck Protection Program ensure that workers pay the wages of the employees. Now, we think that it's important to have a paycheck protection program for those who are paying taxes, have paid taxes in the past, and who are in danger of not getting their salary for the month of March, April, May. Now, we have calculated it, even if you take only 15,000 as an average, it'll only cost 15,000 crore for the month of April, and that's doable. And we should do that so that the employer is absolutely assured that if he pays the paycheck for the employees, at least these 1 crore people, the government will back him up. There's a financial backstop for the money that he will pay as salary or wages for the month of April.
Thank you, sir. Any more question on suo motu? Sandeep,
Yeah.
Sanjeev Trivedi.
Yeah. I have one.
I'll
I have
come
a
to
question
you.
soon.
Rahulji, I'll come to you. Sanjeev, go ahead, please. Unmute your mic and ask a question. Go ahead.
Mr. Chidambaram, I have a question. You, in the Congress party, your 11-member committee had a meeting and you formulated the suggestions to the government, which has been submitted to the government, I suppose. Then Mrs. Sonia Gandhi also wrote a letter about the MSME to the government. Now you are also addressing a press conference on the MSME. The government says that we already are doing something and you are actually trying to fish for credits because that is in the pipeline. So do you think that there is a misplaced priority of the government that they have not come up with the MSME program as yet? Or is it that you are just trying to force it because the government is actually late in coming out with the proposals for that?
What has the government done? The last time I heard the finance minister was in March 25, when she announced that so-called 1.7 lakh crore package, which is really worth only 1 lakh crore, and the cash outgo was only 60,000 crore. Be that as it may, she promised a financial plan for businesses. We're not talking only about MSMEs. My statement talks about MSMEs and non-MSMEs, which is business as a whole. For the last 37 days, they have not announced the second part of the plan. FAP2 has not been announced. It's the business of the opposition to point to the government its failure to keep its promise, and to pressure the government to act. What is there to take credit here? We are in the opposition. It's our business to pressure the government to act. And if the government doesn't act for 37 days, and tomorrow is the last working day of this month, and salaries are due on the 1st of May or the 2nd of May, is it not our right to pressure the government to act? And if the government acts, well and good. If the government does not act, you will find me come back and pressure the government again. That's our responsibility and our duty.
Okay, sir. We'll take the next question. Rahul Mishra, please come in on Suo Moto. Unmute your mic first.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, parallel to this paycheck protection program, there are a huge number of people here in India who were in transition or lost a job in last 6 months. They are not getting salary checks or any sort of remuneration. They are stuck in a really dire straight situation. Any consideration for them as well? Because economic situation in the country has been worst, is depleting in the last 1 year. So any consideration for them who are out of the circulation for last 1 year?
I agree with you. People who have no certainty about their paycheck or salary is more than the 12 crore people that I pointed out in my statement. But I have to go by data. I have 2 data points. One is the MSME Ministry's data point that 11 crore people are engaged in MSMEs. The other data point is the 1 crore people whom the Income Tax Department says have filed tax returns and reported a salary income of less than 30,000 a month. Now, if your salary income is less than 30,000 a month, and I'm taking an average of 15,000, your finances are very fragile. So we are therefore focusing today on the 11 crore people engaged in MSMEs and the 1 crore people whose financial position is very fragile. But I entirely agree with you, there are more. It's a government who should identify who are the other vulnerable sections and come out with a plan. I'm focusing on these 2 because I'm basing it on government data. I agree with
sir, may I please take the rejoinder as well, because yesterday there was a report of massive withdrawal from the provident funds, because these are the people who did not get their salaries in March or maybe February, who have right now no resort than to exhaust their provident fund. What's your take on that?
You're absolutely right. See, when you run out of cash at home, you will first go to your bank and draw some cash. But you don't have enough cash in the bank, you'll have to go to your EPF, which means, people are being pushed to the brink. All these are pointers that people are being pushed to the brink, and yet the government doesn't act for 37 days.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I'll go to Premanshu from Anand Bazar. Premanshu, please come in.
Yeah, hello, sir. My question is that any amount of financial package for MSME or paycheck, what you have just said, that may further increase the fiscal deficit. Do you agree with the monetization of deficit?
You see, I have said, and the Congress party has said, that we must borrow, and if it breaches the 3.5% of GDP, which they have projected in the budget, so be it. It doesn't really matter. But what part of the fiscal deficit should be monetized is a decision that can be taken after we know the size of the fiscal deficit. Yesterday, for example, Dr. Arvind Subramanian, former CEA, said, yes, if necessary, we have to monetize. I can give you a whole list of very conservative economists and conservative central bankers who have said we have to breach the fiscal deficit limit of 3.5, we have to borrow, and if necessary, let me repeat that, if necessary, we have to monetize a part of that fiscal deficit. Dr. Rangarajan has said it, Dr. Raghuram Rajan has said it, Dr. Govind Rao has said it, and I think yesterday Dr. Arvind Subramanian has said it, Dr. Abhijit Banerjee has said it. So monetization of a fiscal deficit is not a no-go area, but what part should be monetized can be decided a little later. At the moment, you must be prepared to borrow and spend.
Okay, so we'll go to the next one. Sunil Prabhu from NTV. Sunil, come in, please.
Sir, I just wanted to, on your suo moto statement, you had made a very categorical point about paychecks, about these 2 lakhs that they must be considered seriously by the government. But the issue remains about, the FRBM, which your state chief ministers have been talking about, as well as the fiscal deficit, that it should be breached, go to 5%. These are what state chief ministers in, the 4 meetings that they've had. To speak on that and explain what exactly you have in mind?
You see, there is an escape clause in the FRBM. The central government has already invoked the escape clause and has budgeted a 3.5% fiscal deficit for 2020-2021. For the state governments, the limit is 3%, and they are pressing for increasing the limit to at least 4 or 4.5. Now, I think the state governments are absolutely correct. How can they manage this year's finances with only a 3% fiscal deficit limit? They should be allowed to go up to 4% and if necessary up to 4.5%. Now, that is my view, and I would strongly endorse the Chief Minister's plea that they should be allowed relaxation in the fiscal deficit limit.
Thank you, sir. We have another question based on your statement. Anand Patel from India Today. Come in, please.
So my question is also based on the financial distress in the states. Even during the Prime Minister's meeting, the states raised this issue. And as you rightly pointed out that, the center can bail out the employees with 15,000 salaries by coming up with a package. But the states are also facing a problem in paying out salaries to their employees as well, because their resources have been cut drastically. But the center so far is non-committal on any package for the states, let alone releasing their GST due amounts. Do you think the center is in a deep financial trouble because of which the states are also facing the heat?
You see, the center is non-committal in everything. What happened in the Chief Minister's conference with the Honorable Prime Minister day before yesterday? You heard the Puducherry Chief Minister brief the media after that. On every issue that is raised, do we have an exit strategy after the lockdown? Are we going to get more money from the center? The center is non-committal. How can you have a non-committed center in this time of grave crisis? The states, I've been speaking to chief ministers, finance ministers, some officers. The states are very worried because their revenues are completely dried up. GST is now virtually what the center will share with them, and their excess revenues are dried up because liquor is banned. So how will the states manage their payments every month? How will they pay salaries? How will they pay pensions? How will they take care of their running expenditure? I think many of the states have already resorted to WMA, Ways and Means Advance. Some of them are perhaps an overdraft, but these are band-aid solutions. The center must commit to providing financial assistance to the states. That statement must come from the Prime Minister. Once that statement is made, obviously the officers will sit together and decide what is the extent of financial assistance each state requires and each state deserves. But there is no statement at all. And I strongly support the Chief Minister's demand that the center must come up with a commitment to support the state finances by generous grants.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask, is there more question on suo motu? Sasidhar Pathak ji और IANS से इमाम साहब, क्या आपके सवाल suo motu पर हैं? आवाज नहीं आ रही.
Can I ask? अब आ रही मेरी आवाज?
Good morning, Mr. Chidam. Hello. Hello.
हाँ, ये शशिधर जी रुक जाइए, इमाम बोल रहे हैं, उसके बाद आपको बुलाते हैं. इमाम.
Sir, the government is saying that the company should not go for layoffs or pay cuts, but anyway, layoffs should be stopped because from last 6 months we are seeing that layoffs are going continuously, and in last 37 days, as you have said, the small companies are on verge of closure. So government should come up with layoffs also, any procedure for layoffs also?
You see, if you assure the MSME sector and in the non-MSME sector, at least the category of employees who have very low salaries, that the employer will be supported if he pays a salary for the month of April. There will not be any layoff in the month of May. We can take it month by month. But if salaries are not paid, say in the first 2 or 3 days of May, that means that the employer is preparing to lay off or retrench. See, these are technical differences. If you don't pay salary, it's as good as laying off a worker, as good as retrenching a worker. Therefore, I think what is important is find a way today or tomorrow to ensure that the MSME sector, which engages 11 crore people, and the non-MSME sector, the sector that I spoke about, the 1 crore employees who file tax returns with low salary income, they are at least protected. If these 12 crore families are protected, large-scale layoffs and retrenchments can be avoided. If they are not protected, I'm afraid layoffs and retrenchment will happen. This will be unannounced layoff, unannounced retrenchment, and then after some time, it will become an announced layoff and an announced retrenchment.
Thank you, sir. We'll move to the next one. Shashidhar from Amar Ujala, पूछिए सवाल.
गवर्नमेंट ने उपाय किए वो किए हैं. आपको क्या लग रहा है कि 1, 2, 3 में 1, 2, 3 और 4 पॉइंट्स में गवर्नमेंट को अभी इमीडिएट कौन-कौन से स्टेप उठाने चाहिए, खास करके फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर के लिहाज से? सर.
Well, I've understood the question. He wants me to say, what should the government do? 1, 2, 3, right?
Right, sir.
Yeah,
right.
sir.
We have said it in a series of statements. Today's statement is confined only to the employees. But there are other things that the government should do. One, they should prepare an exit strategy out of the lockdown. Number two, they should immediately find a way to the issue of migrant workers. They want to go home. They do not want to remain in shelter homes or quarantines or camps. The conditions are atrocious there. Number three, the center must promise financial assistance to the states. It must be a generous commitment that the states will be helped in these difficult times. Number four is what I set out today. The April salary of 12 crore employees and their families, which are dependent on those salaries, must be protected by the 3 steps that we have announced, namely a wage protection assistance, a credit guarantee fund, and a paycheck protection program. These will be 1, 2, 3, 4. But there are many other issues. But since you asked me to prioritize them, I've said 1, 2, 3, 4. On the economic side, on the medical and health side, of course, there are a number of other issues, but I'm not dealing with them today.
Sir. Thank you, sir. If you allow, sir, we'll open the floor to the other questions, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll begin with Siddharth, the first question that he asked. Sir. Siddharth, can you repeat the question?
Okay, sir. So my question was that yesterday, Mr. Rahul Gandhi alleged that there are list of willful defaulters, including the Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi and Vijay Mallya. Government has responded to that. Finance Minister has said that these type of loans were given during UPA, and now they have been waived off. They have been write off by the procedure of the RBI. And Union Minister Prakash Javadekar has categorically said that writing off doesn't mean the waiving off. The Congress party is confusing, is creating confusion on the issue.
All right. I've understood your question. There are 2 questions. Firstly, I asked in Parliament to government to say, when were the loans given? I said, break it up into 3 periods. Loans given prior to 2004 in the Vajpayeeji's regime. Loans given between 2004 and 2014, and loans given after 2014. Your NPA must be broken up into 3 parts. There's no answer so far. I asked this in Parliament. There's no answer so far. Why don't they break up the NPAs into pre-2004, 2004 to 2014, and post-2014? That will give us an idea when the loans were given and which loans have become NPA. You hide that information. You refuse to answer the question. You don't give the breakup, and you keep on throwing these accusations. All these loans were given during the UPA regime. Is the government seriously suggesting that no loans were given after 2014? Or that all the loans given after 2014 are performing loans? I mean, what do they take the people of India for? We may be stupid, we're not so stupid. Loans have been given after 2014. Loans were given prior to 2004 also. Give the breakup. That's answer to question number 1. Question number 2, yes, we understand the technical rules of the RBI. The point is not that. There are defaulters, there are willful defaulters. There are willful defaulters who are staying back in India, facing inquiries and trying their best to pay back. And there are willful defaulters who have fled India and have been declared fugitives. Your RBI rule can apply maybe to the first, second, and third categories. After 4 years, if full provisioning is made, you can technically write off the loan. That you can do for defaulters, willful defaulters, and willful defaulters who are staying back and trying to face an inquiry. But why do you apply that rule to a willful defaulter who has fled India and your government has declared him a fugitive? That's the question. That is the question we've been asking. Why does this rule apply to the Nirav Modis and the Vijay Mallyas and the Mehul Chokshis? They're being declared fugitives. That's where we question the bona fides of this government. Lastly, I want to say something. A finance minister was silent for the last 37 days, suddenly sprung to life and sprung to the defense of these fugitives. Isn't that a little surprising and ironical?
Right, sir. We'll move to the next question. Arun from Network 18, please come in, Arunji.
Thank you, Pranav. Chidambaram ji, you must have seen a series of tweets by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman yesterday night. And these tweets came after your party's press conference and your former president's tweet on reports that this government has write-off more than 68,000 crore to 50 willful defaulters. She, in one of her tweets, categorically said, "Kisi ka loan maaf nahi kiya gaya hai. The recovery process is still on." What is your reaction on her tweet?
She's quoting a technical rule. We are not on the technicality. In fact, Mr. Randeep Surjewala has answered all those technical points. The point I'm making is a larger point. Assuming there is a technical rule, why apply it to the cases of Nirav Modi, Mehul Chokshi, Vijay Mallya, who are declared fugitives and absconders? She should answer that question. I'll tell you the numbers. For Nirav Modi and Mehul Chokshi, it's 8,048 crore. For Jatin Mehta, it is 6,038 crore. For Vijay Mallya, it's 1,943 crore. Why does that technical rule apply in these three cases and in the cases of others who have been declared fugitives?
Thank you.
Right, sir. Thank you. We'll come to go to the next question. Sanjeev Chopra from PTI. Sanjeev, please come in.
Yeah. Thank you, Pranavji. Good morning, Mr. Chidambaram.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, since a lot of you and cry over the RBI list of top 50 loan defaulters. So, since the government is saying that they are only technically written off, and are they recoverable at all at this stage, since the RBI said they're only technically written off? So are they recoverable or not? And secondly, on the government's criticism that the Congress is misleading the people because around 1.45 lakh crore worth of such loans were also written off between 2009 and 2014 by the UPA government.
I'm not saying there is no technical rule. Why does she take shelter behind the technical rule? The point I'm asking is, why do you apply the technical rule to somebody who's been declared a fugitive, who's left the country stealthily, and you're trying to get him back? That is the question that I'm asking. Yes, I'm sure between 2004 and 2014, banks were applying the rule and technically writing off 1.6 lakh crore. But by the same token, between 2014 and 2019, the Modi government has written off 6,66,000 crore. So when you mention 1.6 lakh crore, should not the finance minister also mention the 6,66,000 crore rupees that her government has written off between 2014 and 2019? Are they recoverable? I don't know. They may be recoverable if there are assets in India or worldwide. Those are questions which the government must answer. But the more fundamental question is, when Mr. Rahul Gandhi asked the names in Parliament, the finance minister refused to disclose the name. Thank God the RBI has disclosed the names. That is point one. Point two, she should still answer, why is this rule being applied to fugitives? Let me repeat that. This rule can be applied to other categories of defaulters, but why is it being applied to fugitives?
Thank you, sir. We'll move to the next question. Raman from News 24, please come in.
धन्यवाद प्रणब जी सर कल रात में yesterday night Nirmala Sitharaman tweeted and today Prakash Javadekar tweeted. An interesting part of Prakash Javadekkar's tweet, Rahul Gandhi should take tuition from P. Chidambaram on the difference between write-off and waive-off. Narendra Modi government has not waived off any loan. What is differences between write-off and waive-off according to Prakash Javadekar?
You see, I'm now taking tuition from the finance minister and the HRD minister. I don't mind. I'm not holding a tuition class. Let me tell you,
This information.
There is a rule which says if full provisioning is made, you can do a technical write-off, but still the loan can be recovered through legal means. One is not denying that there's such a rule. There is such a rule. But that rule will apply to a normal defaulter whose business has failed. That rule will apply even to a willful defaulter who has, say, hidden his income or hidden his assets. It may even apply to a willful defaulter who has committed a crime but remains in India, faces an inquiry by the income tax department, by the banks, by the CBI or whatever. But the point we are asking is, these are fugitives. They have fled India. Under your nose, they left India. You have declared them fugitives and absconders. Why are you applying this rule to the Nirav Modis, Mehul Chokshis, and Vijay Mallya's? That is the question they should answer. Am I clear? That is the question they should answer.
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you.
Right, sir. Thank you. We'll move to the next one. Yeah, Sandeep Phukan, please come in.
Yeah, sir, in your statement, you've listed out many of the things, including a paycheck protection, waiving off of employers' liability to pay provident fund and so on. But if you look at the steps so far that the government has taken, they are more like, cutting down, freezing the dearness allowance, cutting down salaries of ministers and members of parliament. It seems to me that the government is actually worried about its own revenue estimates. The budget that they got passed just last month probably will have to be completely reworked. So do you think that the center even has that kind of wherewithal or fiscal bandwidth to give these kind of dole-outs to states or others?
See, every step that the government has taken, like cutting interest rates on small savings instruments, on PPF, on cutting dearness allowance or suspending dearness allowance and dearness relief. Firstly, are band-aid solutions. And secondly, they hurt the middle class. They hurt the middle class, which is hardworking and paying taxes. These are extraordinary times. Extraordinary times require extraordinary remedies, extraordinary solutions. Just look back to 2008 in the international financial crisis. If the central banks of the world had followed these conventional rules, the economy of the world would have collapsed. They took what are called unconventional measures. That is what we are pleading. Not only I, but many eminent economists who understand economics far more than any of us does, are pleading that you must do whatever it takes to help the poor, the vulnerable, the neglected, at the same time protect the economy from a complete collapse. Which is why we are saying, yes, your revenues will take a hit, but so will your expenditure also take a hit. For example, you have provided 45,000 crore for BSNL and MTNL revival. That won't be spent this year. Your Central Vista, whatever you have provided, if you cut back, that can't be spent this year. On your bullet train, if you hold back the expenditure, that won't be spent this year. There are ways of cutting expenditure also. But despite that, the revenues will take a hit, the expenditure will take a hit, yet the fiscal deficit will cross 3.5%. You heard the governor RBI say yesterday, whatever we do, the fiscal deficit is going to cross 3.5%. So be it. Let it cross 3.5. Let it go to 4.5. Let it go to 5, which means you'll have to borrow more. So borrow more. That's what everybody in the world is doing. That's what everybody is advocating for India. Borrow more. And if necessary, a part of the fiscal deficit can be monetized later. I think most central banks are open to that idea, and I'm sure RBI will be open to that idea too. Instead of looking at unconventional measures, extraordinary measures for extraordinarily difficult times, the government is indulging in band-aid solutions which are not helping the economy at all.
Sir, a few of our friends are watching this press conference on YouTube. They have sent in the question. I'll take them to you. Sagar from Deccan Herald asks, why criticize PM CARE when several chief ministers have also set up separate COVID-19 relief funds?
We are not criticizing a prime minister's fund. All that we are saying is there's already a prime minister's fund, isn't it? Prime minister's disaster relief fund or something. There's already a fund. If there is already a fund under a set of trustees and rules and regulations, why create another fund? There's been no answer to that question. And I'm told that the rules and regulations of the new fund, the PM CARES fund, are very, very different from the rules and regulations of the old fund. So why create a new fund?
Right, sir. The next question is from Hindu Business Line. Jigis asks, state finance ministers of opposition ruled states fear that the center may announce a physical emergency and it will further weaken the states. How do you see this?
Well, I think even to utter those words at this point of time may be inappropriate. I don't want to use the phrase financial emergency. I hope we are not pushed into that. If the government acts promptly, if the government acts wisely, and if the government acts boldly by taking into account the advice of eminent economists, I think we can avoid a financial emergency. We should do everything to avoid a financial emergency, because a financial emergency will mean that whatever little financial powers are there with the state governments are taken away.
He follows it up with another question, sir. What should be done to revitalize agrarian economy? How do you look at the suggestions such as reorganizing rural and agriculture sector by forming producing cooperatives?
No, those are ideas which are already on the table. Producer cooperatives are already there. That's a much larger question, much beyond the scope of this press conference. We have Dr. Ashok Gulati, Dr. Himanshu, and many others spell out measures for revitalizing the agricultural economy. Those can be done. At the moment, the immediate thing is procurement of the Rabi crop and paving the way for the sowing of the Kharif crop. These two are attended to. I think much of the agricultural economy will be protected. So procure every kilo of grain that is offered by farmers and pave the way for the Kharif crop by allowing plowing, sowing, make sure that fertilizers, seeds are available and labor is available and labor is paid. If these two things are done between now and say October, much of the agricultural economy will be protected.
The next question is from the Tribune. Aditi wants to ask, sir. She in fact quotes you. You are asking why the government should apply the technical right of rule to absconders. She gets that point, and then she asks, I want to ask you why these three people, Mehul Choksi, Nirav Modi, and Vijay Mallya, are the fugitives even today if their liabilities have been written off by the government. Doesn't the fact that they remain fugitives mean that their loans are recoverable like those of the other willful defaulters?
Well, I don't know whether they're recoverable or not. Whether they're recoverable will depend upon their assets. Assets which are in India and elsewhere, which can be attached, and once the government has banks have a decree in their favor, they can recover. Those are numbers which are not available with me. The fact that they are fugitives, in my view, places them in a separate category. And to that separate category, the technical rule, even if it is on the books, should not be applied. That is my view.
Okay, sir. Next question is from Vasindu Mishra. And I think you partially answered this. The government has acknowledged that the NPAs have risen, but they insist that these loans were given out during UPA regime. Why were no steps taken to prevent such risky disbursal? is what he asked.
Answer the question. They don't
Right,
give
sir.
the breakup between pre-2004, between 2004 and 2014, and post-2014. Let them give the breakup. The picture will become very clear. We had, for example, when the Yes Bank collapse took place, we had given the numbers. The entire loan portfolio went up 4 times after 2014. So how did Yes Bank give the loans after 2014? And even in that case of Yes Bank, will you blame the UPA? Those numbers were put out by me. They are in the public domain. Please look at those numbers. The outstanding loan book went up 4 times after 2014 in the case of Yes Bank.
Right, sir. We'll open the floor once again to see if there are more questions. Vineet ji, Sanjeev, you've asked once. और लोगों को भी पूछने दीजिए जिन्होंने अब तक नहीं पूछा है. Vineet ji, you can assist me.
नहीं, मुझे लगता है कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है.
Everybody has asked, no?
आप कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है.
संजीव, आइए पूछे.
हाँ, संजीव को पूछा है.
There is a legal position.
Go.
Mr. Chidambaram, I was just wondering whether there is a legal position which says that all those who are fugitives, they cannot be the beneficiary of the provision of waiving off. And if there is no legal provision, do you think that very consciously the government actually chose these 3, 4 people who are termed fugitives by you and by the courts, and they actually were given the benefit of the standing law that we have?
See, a loan is a loan is a loan. There is no legal provision which writes off a loan. These are rules, regulations made by the RBI. They have to be applied using common sense. The RBI has made a rule which says if the full provisioning has been made for 4 years, you can do a technical write-off, but the loan will still remain recoverable on the books of the bank. We all understand that. But when you apply that rule, would you apply it to fugitives? I ask you, suppose you were a banker and one of your loanees became a fugitive. Would you strongly recommend that the rule should be applied to such a person also? I don't think the rule should be applied to such a person.
Thank you, sir. We'll go to the last question. Rahul Mishra ji, yeah, come in. Unmute kar le. Go ahead. You muted yourself again.
Yes, sir. Has the government sufficiently exploited the government structures to evade any sort of a charge of governance crisis in future, which the academicians already they are charging Xi Jinping in China or Donald Trump in America? Do you think our government has been exploiting the established structure sufficiently to evade this charge?
No, I don't understand the question. What governance structures?
Governance crisis, the established structure, how a democracy works in a time of a pandemic like this, have they taken on board all the structures, established structures? Because say we have more than 4,000 MLAs across India, of which just 1,300 plus MLAs are with BJP, 800 plus MLAs are with Congress, and look at the non-government MLAs that are not affiliated with the government ruling combination, that number is far more than, they do not have even a 1/3 majority count of MLAs. So do you think Congress has taken are exploiting this established structure
to the extent
in finding in pandemic, so that it do not get charged that there was crisis when.
Yeah, he's understood. Right. Let him answer.
To the extent I understand your question, my answer is government has bypassed every other institution. In fact, there has been a lot of writing on the fact that all powers today centralized in the central government and even within the central government in one office. Now, this is not good in the long run. I think we should seriously ask the question whether Parliament should be reconvened, whether it should be reconvened physically or digitally. Those are matters which can be explored. Similarly, we should seriously ask the question whether the high courts and the Supreme Court must become more open to hearing more cases. There are many other institutions which are completely paralyzed. For example, I was told yesterday that in the Information Commission of the states, no Information Commission in any state is functioning today under the cover of the pandemic. They've all closed their offices. No questions are being answered. No questions are being entertained. I think, all right, we should give the benefit of doubt to the government in the month of April, but surely in May, we should begin to ask the question whether other institutions of governance in this country should not come back to life and should not be doing their duties, beginning with Parliament. I would support that other institutions should come back to life and begin to discharge their responsibilities, and Parliament should show the way. At least the Parliamentary Committee should show the way. I was rather disappointed that the Standing Committee on Home Affairs, headed by my colleague, Mr. Anand Sharma, was not allowed to hold a virtual meeting. If the Home Ministry is not questioned at this point of time, who else can be questioned?
Thank you, sir. I think with that, we have come to the end of the briefing.
Thank you.
We hope that the government pays heed to your advice and follows up.
I tell all my friends in the media, be well, be safe, and we hope we can meet face to face. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, everyone, for joining.